Here are my top 5 hypocrites of 2024. To be fair, there were so many that it was actually quite tricky to pick the worst offenders. But let's start with number 5, former Transport Secretary Louise Haigh.
I'm completely at a loss to understand how he can possibly pretend that he hasn't. His pathetic non-apology in the House of Commons today was a total slap in the face to the British public. And the only question he should now answer is when he will resign.
Yes, when should Boris Johnson resign? Because she was basically talking about Boris and saying how he has done something, he's lied and done stuff that was totally wrong, and he has a criminal conviction or a conviction of sorts because he had to pay a fine because he ate some cake. But it turned out that Louise has a conviction of her own, albeit a spent one. Back in the day, Louise claimed that she'd been robbed and her work mobile phone half-inched. However, she apparently found it and did not report this to her bosses at Aviva. She was charged with fraud by misrepresentation. Oops. At number 4 is Labour MP Dawn Butler. Now, Dawn appears to see racism in everything.
The New Age of Empire, page 95, tells us exactly what's happening. This is Why I Resist by Dr. Shola, page 103, explains about racial gatekeepers that Musa Okwangas from Byline Times talks about. And my question to the Minister is, the government briefed a clear message well in advance of this report landing. Why did the government do that?
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I think it is disgusting that a member of this House will stand up and accuse people of being racial gatekeepers. This is the same nonsense we have heard time and time again, calling people Uncle Toms, calling people house Negroes and house slaves, and calling them racial gatekeepers. The fact that she is able to stand here and use that phrase without any shame whatsoever just shows how far the Labour Party has fallen.
Outrageous. After constantly complaining about racism, Dawn shared a post describing Kemi Badenoch as the most prominent member of white supremacy's black collaborator class, which, in my view, is a tad racist. The tweet she shared was posted on X shortly before the Tory leadership contest result was announced. Dawn deleted it pretty sharpish when it may have dawned on her, pardon the pun, that it was a bad idea. The tweet offered some handy tips for surviving the immediate surge of Badenoch, which was white supremacy in blackface. I mean, you can't complain about racism towards you and then be retweeting stuff like that. Shame on you, Dawn. At number 3, Just Stop Oil. I don't need to explain what's happening. You can hear what's happening, aren't you? They're spraying something. After preaching their virtues, it turns out that Just Stop Oil are just as bad as the rest of us, because they've actually been caught importing T-shirts made by low-paid workers in the Dominican Republic. The eco-activist group was branded a hypocrite for getting merchandise shipped from 4,000 miles away, rather than reducing its carbon footprint by having them made in the UK. I mean, the average textile worker in the Dominican Republic makes less than £40 a day. But Just Stop Oil is charging 20 quid a pop. At number 2, after explaining very clearly whilst in opposition the damage that a raise in national insurance would do, our Chancellor Rachel Reeves has gone and done it anyway.
Despite all of their election promises to cut national insurance contributions, they're actually raising them against the strong advice of business and trades unions. The Conservative government's actions will make each new recruit more expensive. Increase the rates of employers' national insurance by 1.2 percentage points to 15% from April 2025.
Utter hypocrite. But then, at number 1, son of a toolmaker, Sir Keir Starmer, who promised not to raise tax on working people.
The person I have in my mind, Nick, when I say working people, is people who earn their living, rely on our services and don't really have the ability to write a cheque when they get into trouble. So the sort of people I'm meeting pretty well every day now.
He's so out of touch. Nobody writes cheques anymore. Forget about the pensioners who worked all their lives. They don't actually qualify. But what about farmers, business owners and people who are going on their holidays? Don't they all work? Labour's latest tax grab will affect them all.
We have not announced today anything over and above what we've pre-announced. So none of the plans today in our manifesto for growth, for wealth creation, require us to raise other taxes.
For a man who claimed that he would clean up politics, he's definitely cleaning up. He's got a nerve. Remember the freebies? The waspy women. I could go on. There's so much that I had to leave out on this list. But it's all right, because he's the son of a toolmaker.
And this is something the media will know. I said it many times in the election campaign. My dad was a toolmaker.
So joining me now, Labour activist and writer Aisha Ali Khan. Aisha, welcome. I struggle to find any others other than the Labour Party hypocrites, because there's just been so many of them. I mean, what would your number one hypocrite, who would they be?
Gosh, I'm looking back on 2024 with a sense of fondness. I'm not looking to find people to blame. Obviously, if we're going to go down that route, I would say that the Tory party, they're no longer in power. But the damage that they did over the 14 years that they were in power, and right up till the very end, the bitter end, they were still, carrying on with their very divisive policies. And I do feel that, obviously, we could talk about hypocrites. You've mentioned Keir Starmer, and I could mention a number of Tory party members as well, including Boris Johnson and Nadine Dorries and so on. But to be honest, let's look forward. Let's look at the next year. That's just literally around the corner, a few days left of 2024. Let's look at the positives and let's hope that there's more good news. We could all do with good news, to be fair. The end of the war in Ukraine, the end of the war in Gaza.
Yeah.
There's lots of things to look forward to, and that's what I
hear
want to
you.
concentrate
Well,
on.
we could concentrate on that, but we're concentrating on this right now. What about Louise Haigh, then? I mean, she did say that people with criminal records or people shouldn't be, anywhere near politics, and yet she has one of her own, even though it's a spent one. There she was.
Well, look, I can't actually justify with what happened with her conviction, but I will say that those with spent convictions, it's as though those convictions didn't exist. So I think it's important. But from what I understand, Keir Starmer was fully aware. She made him aware before she was given any position, even when she was in the shadow cabinet as well. So I think this coming to light now, again, this is something that was already stated. You have to declare it anyway, Nana. When you go through when you get your position in any kind of position, in the House of Commons, you have to go through quite a long vetting process and everything. You literally have to declare everything. Everything comes out anyway. You can't hide anything.
Yeah, no,
so
we're not saying. Well, maybe it was, but they were going on about how lawbreakers can't be lawmakers. So you know what I mean? It smacks of hypocrisy. Let's move on to Just Stop Oil. Well, no, let's do Diane. Let's do Dawn Butler. Dawn Butler.
Right. Okay. Well, Dawn is actually a very good friend of mine, and I have a lot of time and respect for her as well. And she was pointing out something that she feels strongly about. Racial gatekeepers, people of colour that basically prevent other people of colour from coming forward and from progressing and so on. And that's her personal belief, that she honestly believes that people in the Tory party, people of colour in the Tory party, have been responsible in preventing other people of colour from progressing.
Yes, because it was specific about Kemi Badenoch, wasn't she? So I'm wondering how Kemi has stopped anyone from progressing. If anything, she is a positive role model for other black women who might see her and think that actually this is achievable. So I'm just wondering how, and it was at that time, the leadership time, where she retweeted that tweet from Nels Abbey about how Kemi Badenoch is the face of white supremacy. Now that is a bit of an allegation, surely.
I mean, look, as soon as she realised that this isn't appropriate, she undid the tweet. So So I do look. I've been involved in politics for over 20 years. There is lots of adversarial kind of attitudes between party members, especially from opposition party members. Sorry, some people choose to do politics that way. I don't. That's their personal choice. It's not something that I would personally do myself. But I do think that given everything that's happened, given the election, that was pretty vile election campaign. Actually, a lot of people were affected. A lot of women were affected. There was a lot of misinformation out there, lots of personal attacks. And I'm not just talking about the Conservative Party or the Labour Party. I'm talking about all women in politics. And this is something that we have to address. And you've mentioned a role model for more people coming into politics. Yeah. And I think it's really important that we have positive role models, whether they're from the Conservative Party or the Labour Party, the Lib Dems or the Greens. Any party that basically fields women candidates and gives positions of power, allows women to stand potentially positions of power, it's a positive thing as far as I'm concerned. All right,
so and very quickly, because we've got to get through these. Just Stop Oil, hypocrites?
Oh, massively. I think the message that they first started with, I'm not going to lie, I thought fantastic. Here is a group of people, they understand, they're using sort of social media and other tactics. But I think it started going a little bit haywire when they started all these protests on the road, stopping people from getting to hospitals and, seeing their loved ones who subsequently passed away. And I think from that point onwards, they've started losing the public support. And I think that's the biggest thing in any campaign, is to have public support behind you. And if you're behaving in a way that is turning public opinion against you, then you need to rethink your strategies. And I've said this before as well. I've been on other sort of platforms and I've spoken about this, that protesting and sort of talking about things and organising demos, it's an amazing aspect of living in a democratic country like ourselves. But it can go too far and causing criminal damage. Absolutely no. Against artifacts,
it's not on, is it?
It doesn't make any sense.
It was a bit silly, wasn't it? Okay, and finally,
on that point,
we find something to agree on, and it would be great to end on agreement, but we're not, because we're going to talk about Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer. Let's bag them in together, because Rachel Reeves, obviously, she said she wasn't going to do national insurance hikes. She explained why she wasn't going to do it, how it was a bad thing, and then she did it anyway. And Keir Starmer, well, there's a list that's just as long as your arm.
But Nana, the way I looked at with Rachel, the information that they had access to before they won the election, and obviously afterwards, it's just, they had to act on the information that they were then told afterwards. And I do think that a lot of the tax hikes and a lot of the sort of the things that they've backtracked on, it's out of necessity. All of these sort of policy changes are out of necessity. Some have been quite knee-jerk, in my opinion, the farmers in tax and so on. But others, I think that there have been, it's kind of like where our hands are tied and we've got no choice. But give it time.
They've definitely got choices.
It's only been about 5 months in power. Give us time.
Give them time, and they might listen. Sometimes you give people time, and there's nothing left. Aisha Ali Khan, thank you very much. Really good to talk to you. She's an activist and writer. Let's bring in my panel commentator, Lee Harris, and CEO of Youth Vote, Alex Cairns. Lee Harris.
That last one made me laugh about not out of necessity. They had to make these choices out of necessity. Yet, within a matter of minutes after taking office, I think they spent about 70 billion quid. It's an utter joke. They're spending 15 billion on foreign aid. Well, we can't even keep our pensioners warm in the winter. I mean, it's absolutely insane. If I was in charge, Anna, I would be immediately scrapping net zero. We simply can't afford it at the moment. I'm not saying that we shouldn't get to net zero.
We can improve things.
We can absolutely, but technology will get us there. But to spend that much money after claiming there's a 22 billion black hole is absolute nonsense.
Well, I think he's been forced to change tack on that, especially with the solar panels.
Well, 9 billion
he was going to have solar farms, and then obviously there was that awful storm. In fact, he announced it after that awful storm that destroyed a load solar farm in Anglesey, which was utter madness. I don't know why he thought that was a good idea. Putting solar panels on top of houses and getting developers to put them on top of houses when they're building them, I think is a good idea. I can't see the problem with that. Alex cans, but...
He's inherited an economic disaster, as you both know, and actually foreign aid is very, very important for the country.
What, more important than our pensioners?
Look, the idea that millions of pensioners are going to freeze to death because they're not getting the winter fuel payment is just ridiculous.
Well,
you both know that's ridiculous.
You said millions, it's not. It was about 4,000, and it was Labour's own research before they were elected that said that about 4,000 pensioners would die as a result of removing the winter fuel allowance. Just to clarify, not millions, thousands.
And I actually disagreed with that release that the Labour Party, that analysis they did, because there's no way conclusively to know that if you don't get winter fuel payment, that you're going to, drop dead in your house.
Somehow they managed it, and that's what they said. So utter hypocrites, aren't they?
No, they're not utter hypocrites. Sorry, I think the person, the Labour Party member or staffer that did that piece of research, that's just not correct, I don't think.
You don't think it's correct? Well, I mean, it was their own research that they used against the Tory party, and now they're in power. Somehow, you're making excuses for it, right?
I'm not making excuses.
22 minutes. See, literally making excuses for them. Because there's no way out, is there? You've done research. There's no way out of that.